What if the quiet at the dinner table wasn't the beginning of the end, but the start of something better? You know the moment I mean, the one where you look across at your partner, the kids are gone, maybe it's retirement, and you think, wait, who are we now? Hey everyone, I'm Jody Silverman, life coach, empowerment speaker, and your host here on Beyond Empty Nest. And yes, I used to think that moment meant something was broken. But what if it's actually an invitation? That's why I'm so fired up to share today's conversation with you. I brought in marriage and family therapist, Dr. Becky Weston, a woman with deep clinical expertise and a personal story that'll hit close to home. She's unpacking the surprising traits that predict whether your marriage will thrive or quietly fall apart. You'll walk away from this episode with hope, clarity, and yes, a few real tools to try tonight. And when you're done listening, check out the show notes for a link to Dr. Becky's powerful new book, I Think I Want Out. It's part relationship GPS, part midlife must read. All right, you ready to feel seen and supported in your marriage, ladies? Then let's dive in. Welcome to Beyond Empty Nest, Dr. Becky.
Hey, thank you, Jody. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited about this topic because I've met many, many women, hundreds of women, and there is for a lot of them that, oh my God, when did you get here moment when they look across the dinner table at their spouse and wonder, when did you get to the house because the kids are now gone? And I love that we're having this conversation because that I always used to say, that doesn't mean your marriage is over. It's like an invitation. And that's why I love this conversation because you're going to really share some tips and tools that can really, help us embrace and have that strong relationship in this next chapter because it could be really great.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, I see you've got a little Buddha sitting there, behind you, and a lot of counseling theories are kind of based out of Buddhism and the greatest religions.
Yeah.
I know Buddha's not a religion, it's a philosophy, but it also takes some from Christianity and Judaism and
Yep.
others. And in those, it's sort of like, well, of course, focusing on the now, living in the now, but accepting, and making the most of whatever life brings to you, right?
Yeah.
So I think that couples that are facing an empty nest should put their focus on each other.
Yes.
Most of us, when we're raising our kids, typically, the mom is very focused on the children and dad is focused on career. Although, of course, nowadays, many women are focused on their career.
Yeah.
There's a huge chance that they're going to grow apart during those years if they haven't been nurturing the relationship along the way. But when you get to the fork in the road and the kids go, you know, your relationship's probably going to make it or break it at that point,
Yeah.
And so the only thing you can do to make the most of this with your relationship is turn back toward each other and focus on the relationship and start kind of dating each other again. And,
Oh, I
you
love that. The turn back
you
to each
know,
other.
um,
Yeah.
I tell couples who kind of, bored after many years together, they think there's nothing more exciting that could possibly happen, is to start dating again, just like you
I
did
know. I
in
know.
the day. Instead of being slumpadinkas in the chair with your iPad or your phone and watching marathons of Netflix.
Right.
You know,
No, I agree. Start.
couples are constantly complaining to me about how the phone and the iPads and tablets and stuff have overtaken their relationship, almost as if their spouse is having an affair with it,
Yeah.
you know. And so
It's
it's just like put that down and allot some time, just to sit down, even if after work, 30 minutes, an hour, and just keep things quiet in your room and go, hey, what's going on?
I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh, I can't. This whole conversation is getting good already. And before we really, really, really dive deep, I love that. I love the phrase turn toward each other, but we'll get into that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I need a little backstory. Let's tell our audience, like, what brought you to doing this work?
Well, number one, I've always been obsessed with relationships. I think I was born with this gene. I always wanted to read Ann Landers when I was a teenager, young teen, older kid. Ann Landers, Dr. Joyce Brothers, and then of course there was Irma Bombeck, who was a humor
Yes.
writer back in our day. And so I imagined that I was going to take over for Ann Landers or Dear Abby someday, write an advice column and make it funny. So like Irma Bombeck. And so I did major in journalism and did plan to be an advice columnist, but my professors told me that you have to cover house fires and murders and stuff like that. And I had no interest in that. All I wanted to do was write about relationships. So I didn't go into journalism because of that. It was, to me, it was relationships or nothing. So, to make a long story short, I ended up going the housewife route. I was kind of raised in a family that told me that that's how my life was going to turn out. I was going to be a housewife. So I did that. I married a guy. I moved to San Antonio, Texas. We had two little kids. And not too long into the marriage, he suddenly kind of slammed a door in my face emotionally, started rejecting me, treating me differently. It was very strange, like going from extremely warm and lovey-dovey to cold. And I spent the next 5 years trying to get him to come back out and play with me. And he wouldn't do it. And so we had a marriage crisis where I just said, I've had it. I'm tired of being neglected and treated kind of mean.
Hmm.
So I said, I think I need you to move out of the house. I'm really fed up with you. And we went to the marriage therapist. The marriage therapist said, I can't help you. If Becky's not motivated to work on the marriage right now, then there's nothing I can do. So we ended up managing this marriage crisis ourselves. Looking back, it's just a complete disaster, a clown show, ridiculous. We made a mess of things, ended up, I think, prematurely divorced. And it just never sat well with me that the marriage therapist couldn't help us.
Yeah.
I had to get a job after that. And the only job I was going to do was advice columnist. Okay. So I lobbied the newspaper in San Antonio for 2 years to give me a column. And they said they started me off as a feature writer after 2 years. And then after 2 years more, they finally gave me a column about relationships like Carrie Bradshaw, but they wouldn't let me be an advice columnist. It had to be written like, a story about,
Right.
a date I had or something.
Gotcha.
So it was an extremely popular column in San Antonio, and I was always bringing up subjects about how terrible dating was as being a single mom, so hard and stuff like that. And then people always griped that I didn't have credentials, that I wasn't a therapist. I was just a person writing about relationships, like Ann Landers wasn't a therapist. But I got tired of hearing about it. So I went to graduate school to get those credentials. And when I was
That's
in graduate
standard.
school, I started looking up the research on marriage crisis to find out why couldn't the marriage therapist help us? Well, what I learned was they don't teach you anything about marriage crisis in school, number
Of
one.
course not.
And number two, if you want to know anything about it, you got to go find the research yourself. You got to have a special interest in it. And I found a mother lode of unbelievably wonderful research for helping couples in marriage crisis. So I just told myself after 5 years of grad school, when you get out of here, you've got to make it your business to provide this information to people. So when I got out of grad school, I started creating a specialty in marriage crisis. I wrote this book about what I wanted couples to know, that what was in all this mother load of research, how to, should you separate? How do you
Right.
know when you want to get a divorce? Blah, blah, blah. And it took me 20 years to get a book contract. It only came out this past February.
Oh my God, this is great.
You
I
know,
love
so it's
this.
all written and based on my experience of working with now thousands of couples in this realm. And so, but I mean, there's a whole chapter or not a whole chapter, but there is a segment on midlife crisis and then of course, co-parenting and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I
Well,
teach
we will.
couples how to diagnose their marriage, and those of you that are, in the empty nest thing that, being aware of how to diagnose your marriage and and basically keeping your pulse on your marriage and knowing that it's kind of going well is a very worthy thing that you should be doing. Just like you monitor your health, you can monitor the health of your marriage with the information that's in this book, because
Uh,
your marriage can be going downhill without you even knowing it.
I totally see how that could happen. All right, so I love your story. Could do a whole episode on the credential thing. It's like the scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion, but I won't get into it. Good for you for going back to school. That's a dare. But now that so we have your backstory, and I love that because the truth is, most of us learn on the job anyway. Most of us learn from life experiences anyway. So let's talk about something that you like to share. Let's talk about the surprising traits, because we'll get into what you were about to say, like you can pay attention a little more. But what are the surprising traits that you have found that predict a happy marriage and that ones that lead to trouble?
There's been tons of research done on this, Jody, backwards and forwards. So, when a therapist is telling you in marriage therapist that what you two are doing is making them nervous, it's because you're doing one of the things that predicts divorce. And believe me, a lot of couples do those things. So, John Gottman is kind of our Buddha in the marriage and family therapy world. He's done the vast amount of research, and some people go to get Gottman marriage therapy.
Okay.
I personally would steer people away from it just because I think there's better theories to go to.
Mhm.
But his research is absolutely over the top. And so criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling predict divorce. Other things that predict divorce are being rigid, having rules, things have to be a certain way, and being arrogant or grandiose, which is like looking down your nose at someone, treating your spouse like a child, things like that.
Okay. Okay.
The predictors of the happy marriages is the opposite of all of this: flexibility, go with the flow, accepting your spouse as they are, being respectful, all the things you promised probably in your marriage vows to love, honor, and cherish.
Right.
I think whoever wrote those vows was a genius, because that's really what it takes to keep a marriage alive in the long term.
Yeah.
Love is a verb, it's an action word. You cannot love your spouse without doing a loving action.
Ooh, I love it.
And
Yeah.
if any of y'all know about the love languages, the 5 love languages,
Yes.
those are the love actions. So you got to
Yes.
find out what makes your spouse feel loved and do those acts,
Yeah.
so that those are the things that make your spouse's heart sing. And then the honor, of course, is respecting them. So keeping the level of your conversations at a kind and diplomatic level.
Yeah.
And then the cherish is just treating your spouse like you absolutely adore them. And you can tell it by how they look at you, and, how they talk about you and all that kind of stuff. So, if you do those things, you can keep the fire stoked in your relationship, keep it going.
So if you're noticing, it's interesting. I'm thinking about saying, like I said, something, my husband and I are really good. We're really good. We're going on 34 years of marriage. He is
That's
like the
incredible.
kindest. I say we work because there's only room for one of us to be extra, and you're talking to the extra one in the family. But
Of
it's interesting,
course.
right? But you triggered like a thought, like when you said, being rigid and inflexible as some of the surprising traits, and a like a yellowish red flag going up that something's wrong. I think about the things that you really have to be open to being flexible with, like leaving his closet door open.
Yes. Whatever it is, whatever your little
and
pet
and,
peeves
and he
are.
does that, he leaves it, but I do things too. You don't act like I do it. But I remember having the conversation with him. He gets in bed. I'm like, so what's that about? And he goes, what? I go, what's the whole closet door open thing about? He goes, I don't know. I just don't close it. I'm like, okay.
Well, that's what I would have said. I would have said the
Like,
same thing as he said.
yeah. He's like,
It's
oh no,
funny
I just,
because, I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Four Agreements, but I highly
Yeah, I'm like,
recommend it
wait
to
a minute. That's what
anybody.
this is right behind me. The four,
Okay.
you said the four,
Okay. Well, as you know, Don Miguel Ruiz says we're all trained monkeys, like that, the life has us, make all these agreements. And one of your agreements clearly was that a closet door should be closed,
yeah.
whereas he didn't have that agreement,
No, and I didn't
in
get
his
mad at
upbringing.
him.
And so
I
you
and
think
I
something's wrong, right, with it being open.
Yeah, but I
But
said it in like a lighthearted. I didn't say, "Why do
of
you always
course,
keep the door open and you need to shut it?" I was like, I wanted to say that. I did, but I took a deep breath because I've learned about myself, and I'm like, "What's that? Why?" And because I actually said to myself, "Why would you get mad or annoyed at that? Like, what's the big deal?" So if he doesn't shut it and you want to shut, get up and shut it. Like, but so you made me think of that when you said you have to be rigid. Check in with yourself. Ask yourself, why is this behavior triggering me? Like, is it really worth? Like, why is that bothering me? And I think like that's
oh, well, when somebody gets really triggered, really, really triggered to an extreme degree, that's an indicator that one of their old trauma wounds from their
yes,
childhood is getting,
yeah,
pricked
it's
like an old, like a Achilles heel nerve.
yeah, it's
And
not
so
about
that can be
the
very helpful for us therapists because
right.
so yeah, but if it's just a pet peeve, it's probably one of those agreements that you made that, you shouldn't drink out of the milk carton, or whatever, whereas the other person thinks it's totally okay to drink
Yeah.
straight out of the milk carton. It's just but in marriage, we don't really have, if you want to practice appropriate boundaries in marriage, we really don't have the right to tell our clients, our spouses, what they should be doing, what to do. You're not supposed to go fix anything for them without their permission. So,
Kind of
but
like
you
with our
always have the
kids.
right.
Kind of like with our adult
Well,
kids.
you have the right. Like this is true. This rule applies to all adults,
Yeah.
whether it's your child or any, your spouse, is you have the right to make a request. I request that you close the closet door or stop drinking out of the milk carton or whatever it is. They have the right to deny your request. And if they deny your request, then you have to take care of yourself and that you didn't get what it was that you wanted. Now, I tell people if your spouse, if the request is reasonable, you should do it because that's what marriage is.
Yeah. It's a
We
give
don't
and
we don't
take.
want to annoy each other to death, do
Yeah.
we? Like if it
It's,
doesn't bug me that much to, you know, put my cup in the dishwasher.
yeah.
If I was alone, I probably wouldn't do it right away.
Right.
But my spouse values it, so why wouldn't I do that for
Right.
him?
Like, so, okay. Another example before because I want to get into this. This moves into power. This is like the power struggles in a marriage, right? Is this,
Yeah,
this
sure.
is this what you talk about when you talk about power struggles in a marriage and how to advocate for yourself? Like what
Well,
is the
like a
best way
power
to
struggle.
advocate for yourself?
One of the most common ones, that I hear about is the spouse, maybe say the wife moved to Boston with her husband for his job. But she wants to go back home to Virginia,
Mhm. That's
So
a
those
big
are
one. That's a big one.
that's a huge power struggle. But I see that one a lot is that, someone has
Relocation.
sacrificed something for the other and now they want payback or they want,
Mm,
something for themselves. So those kind of power struggles, whether it's moving or something else. I want a different house
mm,
or I want another car. And I've seen, women or men, they're both spouses can make plenty of money. They work, they could afford their own car, but the other spouse will put their foot down and say, you cannot buy a car right now, even though the person can totally afford one.
right.
Those are other kind of power struggles that I deal with in everyday life. And you know what I tell people is you got to understand that most human beings, the way we're wired is we really value freedom. We really, really do. Every human does. They
Yeah.
want to do what they want to do. And
Yeah.
so I tell clients, you don't want to be that person who is keeping people, telling them no and keeping them from their dreams when their dreams are reasonable and affordable and it's
Right.
not pie in the sky stuff. Like
Right.
let people be free to if they want to get stuff and like if they get stuff from Amazon and they can afford it, why give them a hard time about it? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
those are Amazon boxes trigger people by the million all over America. My husband calls them bankruptcy boxes.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know, but the truth is, I whatever I get from there, I can afford it. You know, hopefully I'm not cluttering up the house with
right.
junk, which can be a whole nother
Right. I mean,
problem.
that's another, I mean, if you're getting into, if you're going building up credit card debt because you're shopping virtually and on Amazon every day,
Yes.
well, then there's a real problem there. Then you have the right to say it. If you're gonna, I want a car,
Sure.
but you can't afford a car. But I get what you're saying. If you can afford it, but it's just your value system, like the car is not broken, so why get a new one? But you can both of you well afford a new one, and he or she really wants that new car. They just haven't had a new car in 12 years.
Right.
That's the meeting in the middle. That's be
Well,
agreeable.
right. Maybe you're married to someone pragmatic, you know, maybe
Right.
like maybe I've got a decorator's eye, you know, and so I've got shutters on my windows, but I also want curtains. Well, the pragmatic person doesn't understand why you would put curtains on a window that already has shutters
Right.
because they just think you're trying to block the light or keep people from looking in. They don't get the esoteric
Pretty.
beauty of the curtains, you know, and but you've got to honor, you know, your spouse's
Yeah.
need to, you know, do their thing, whatever that is, if it's curtains or, you know, I've had husbands tell, you know, gripe about their wives getting their nails done. That's a
Oh, yeah.
power strip. You
Do
know,
you know
I'm
what
like, I'm
yeah.
like, dude, you don't mess with that. That is one
No.
area you do
Do,
not mess
do you know what I told my husband, Dr. Becky? I said,
with.
there's one thing in our budget that is going to just get higher and higher and higher. And that's coloring my hair because I am not interested in going gray. And I used to go every 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks. Oh, no, no, I'm four. If I have a month I can't get to, I might push it to 5 weeks. I said, it is non negotiable. This red hair, I'm bought and paid for
That's
every four to
right.
5 weeks. Yeah.
You know, and we brunettes, you know, if you marry a brunette, guys out there, if you just happen to be hearing this, like we're going to have to make a decision early on in life about coloring our hair. I'm
Yeah.
telling you,
Yeah.
you know.
So, I get it. So there's those little things that really why pick on them and
Well,
so
that's what I'm saying is
and
just, you know, if it's nothing
then
to you,
there's the
just
bigger issues and it is a big issue about relocation and then the
yes.
guilt and I don't want if it's let's just say it's the husband who wants to be like you're like well I don't want to tell him no to his dream but I don't want to live somewhere where I want to live in Arkansas. I did that on purpose. No offense to Arkansas. Before we hit record, Dr. Becky and I had to talk about her hometown, Arkansas. But that's a really hard one that I would have a hard time with moving away. And then I would feel so guilty. How can I tell my husband I can't? This is our life. And I don't even know. I would need help with that. We would need help. I'm like, help me do this. Because
It's tough.
I wouldn't want to say yes and then start saying, well, I moved for you, like start getting bitter. I would never want that.
Well, here's the rule of thumb. Here's a rule of thumb
Okay,
on
that's what I
disconnection.
want.
Okay, you want the rule of thumb. Okay, so there's a lot of pleasers out there. I'm sure
Yes,
tons of your listeners are pleasers, and
absolutely.
pleasers tend to throw themselves under the bus so others can be happy. And that is a creator of resentment. Okay, that recipe right there's a math equation to resentment. So if my husband asked me to move to Florida, and so I have to say to myself, okay, Becky, if I move to Florida, am I going to resent him for this? Yes, I am. So I must set a boundary and say, no, I'm not going to agree to move to Florida. But if I can happily go to Florida, or you know what, I really don't mind if we go there or not. I'm kind of neutral, you know, I'm in the neutral zone. Then I can go to Florida and not resent him. So the rule of thumb is don't agree to something to do with or for your spouse unless you can do it with a neutral or happy heart.
I love
Okay.
that. Neutral or happy heart. And
Neutral or happy heart. Otherwise, you have to set a boundary and say, I'm sorry, my darling. That won't be healthy for me to move to Florida.
you
And
know
so
what? It's interesting because I think you can also say, I really don't want to live in Florida, but I understand why it would be better for your career and I want your career to be happy. And maybe list some non-negotiables. Like if we do make this move, do we have do would it be possible, feasible for me? I would want to come back home to visit X amount of times a year. I would, so
That's
you can put some
absolutely.
negotiables in there that can help you a little bit and help that. Yeah, I like.
Absolutely. And my clients who are, can afford it will sometimes have homes in both places,
Okay.
and go back and forth.
So I love that. All right. So I want to talk about, I have something I want to throw out there, but before I do, because you might answer it here, you say that there's a why checking in with your spouse is vital, but how you do the check-in is is important. Like how do you do it right? What do you mean when you say a check-in with your spouse?
Well, I think, this is what I learned when I was researching how marriages die in graduate school. Some of the information that kind of blew me away and then I put in my book. And that is that so many people start becoming unhappy in their marriage and they'll go for months, they'll go for years and never tell their spouse that they're seriously struggling in the marriage. They keep it to themselves. It's a human phenomenon that they can be sitting there and just seething in resentment and getting madder and
Ah,
not say anything. So, needless to say, it's extremely important when you realize that you're becoming disillusioned in your marriage and it's getting serious and it's not going away, that you need to say to your spouse, "Hey, I'm seriously struggling in our marriage right now. We need to go to a marriage therapist, or at least sit down and have a serious, respectful talk about this." But a good way to not have to wait until you're disgruntled, I think, is, every month or every other month, how about, like I said, turn the TV off, put your iPads down, and just go, "Hey, um, it's time for the marriage report. How am I doing?
I love that. I'm writing that down. It's
How am I doing?"
time.
And I got this from Mayor Ed Koch in New York, who used to walk up and down the streets of New York going, "How am I doing?" He'd yell at the citizens of New York, "How am I doing?" And I thought, we all, any of us in relationships should be asking our spouse, "How am I doing?" And here's the thing is there anything you need? Is there anything lacking? Is there anything I could do more of for you? How are things going with you? And just, giving
So
each other a respectful, compassionate report card.
so when you say that, when you say it's time for a marriage report, we're each going to have a turn to ask these questions.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, you have to
Of
be clear
course.
because you don't want to be with that narcissistic one and they'll tell you everything
Oh,
you're not doing.
we're
And you got
going
to
to
be
have an
careful.
all-night marathon.
Right, yeah. Okay, so that did kind of answer my question because I met a woman and about 6 months ago, she actually, you answered, put, I believe everything is energy. Our thoughts are energy to the universe. And I've had conversations about marriage and midlife, but not this one, not what you and I are talking about. And I love your approach. I just love your whole energy is so like positive and smiling. And if you're not watching us, go to my YouTube channel and watch because if you think I smile a lot, you got to look at Dr. Becky. You'd want to sit in her office with her. But this woman said to me, I said, is there anything, any speaker you would want me to bring in? I have a membership, Dr. Becky, called the Moms Who Double Dare, um, a community, and I bring speakers in or a topic that I haven't covered on my podcast yet. She's like, well, and I could tell she was struggling. I said, what do you want to say? It's just you and me. I'm not judging. She said, what about what do you do? What is it about if like you love your husband, you're not looking for divorce. It's not that, but yet you're lonely in your marriage. And even when you're together, you're lonely. And I was like, wow, we can be lonely even when we're together. And it could go for a man too.
True.
And it sounds like this check-in could be a possible, I don't know what that's about.
Well, the check-in is you could say, I wish you would invite me or plan more dates for me. That, I have a lot of women that complain about the fact that they have to plan everything.
And
They not only do they work and take care of the kids, and then they have to plan date nights.
I didn't ask her a lot of questions because I could see she was having a hard time. But I'm thinking back to the beginning of our episode when we say, well, if you're together and you're lonely, what are you doing? Are you just watching TV? Is he on his iPad? Are you on your iPad? Maybe because you can be in the same room with each other and not be there.
Yes, you can. But here's my response, which I
I would
think you're
like
going
to
to
know.
be very surprised. Your spouse is not responsible for your entertainment and your enjoyment of life. You are, as an
That's,
individual.
mm,
And if you are bored, look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Hey, Becky, what do you want to do today?"
I love
You know,
that.
because the whole idea of codependence, y'all, is your happiness is depending on what someone else is doing. Are you kidding me? Are you really going to put your eggs in that basket? I got my eggs in the Becky basket. And if Becky's bored, needs a little excitement, needs to go on a trip, she's going to plan that for herself. Now, if I decide to take my husband with me, that's fine or whatever. But I don't sit around, looking at the wallpaper going, I'm bored. And hey, you over there, entertain me. That's completely ridiculous. The whole idea of it. So even in marriage therapy, we don't want finger pointing and blame. That is what children do that. That's
And
childish.
and I don't think
You know,
she, yeah,
it it's
I
like if my marriage isn't working, I need to say what's my part in
what's my
it
part in it?
and what am I going to do about it?
And I
Instead
and
of
I
you this, you that,
and
you
I
this.
100% believe in that because it's the same thing with happiness. It's your happiness. You're responsible. It starts with you, it ends with you. If it's to be, it's up to me. And yet I can't help but think that, and I don't, and I agree with that 100%. And we needed to hear that message. And yet if I had probed, I think the feeling lonely while you're together has a lot to do with technology too. Like, you know what? When we're sitting at dinner, let's just leave our phones, behind us. Let's talk. Like, I want to hear what was one good thing about your day. But 150% that you are responsible for yourself, your happiness, your life. People can bring you moments of joy. I love that you said that. And I love that you
Now
said
let me tell
go
you,
travel and take a trip if you want to take a trip. There's
yes,
groups out
you
there
don't
for that.
you don't sit there in a state of wanting or needing and expecting your spouse to like read your mind or something.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
my husband's not gonna plan a great birthday for me, and I like to do something special on my birthday. So I just tell him about 2 weeks before, you're taking me to so and so
Yes.
restaurant, and he follows directions very well. And this is it, and this is the gift I'd like to have if you're able to do that. And then I'm happy as a clam. I don't
Beautiful.
sit on there waiting to see if he's going to do something like so many, and clients tell me all the time, he didn't do anything for my birthday. Well, did you give him a heads up? Like, because and here's the other thing that I want to be sure and say. Each of us is responsible for our own mental, emotional health. You talk about me kind of in a positive zone of smiling and everything. You know why? Because I take care of myself. I told you, like, I take great care of Becky. So Becky has a sparkle in her eye and a bounce in her step most days. Not every day, but most days. And so you have to bring your best self, your best mood, your best energy to your marriage. That's your responsibility. I have a lot of clients who are depressed, they're overwhelmed, they have anxiety, and they refuse to do anything about it.
Mm,
And it's affecting their marriages
yeah.
negatively. And I'm telling you, if you're married, if you choose a relationship, it's your responsibility
Yeah.
to stay on top of your mental and emotional health so you can bring your best self to the marriage. No excuses. Get off your bottoms and go get healthy. Whatever that takes.
That's a that
Whatever.
that that yeah, that's a total Mike Jock moment. That whole, you're absolutely right. So we're not adding anything to that because let that land. And I love that. And rewind it and listen to that part over and over and over again. All right. So we're getting towards the end, Becky, Dr. Becky.
Oh.
And you mentioned your book. Your
Mhm.
book came out. Tell everybody when your book came out, what the title of the book is. We will put a link in the show notes for people to buy your book because it is an important, it's not just a book, it's a resource. It's your guide. So tell them what it's called.
It's called I Think I Want Out, What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage. And, you know, and the truth is that the first third of the book is for everyone who's in a marriage or relationship. It totally talks about what a healthy marriage is, how to monitor it and diagnose your marriage and make sure that your marriage is not deteriorating without your awareness, which it can do, how to keep an eye on it, how to keep it alive and healthy. And it also talks about some major communication issues that I see with couples that tear their marriages apart. And I make people aware of it in the book and how important your nervous system is to the health of your marriage. And all these concepts are described hopefully very simply and in great detail in my book. So
I'm sure it is.
for everyone. And you
Everyone,
can get it at
everyone.
all booksellers.
So yeah, click the link. Click the link. We'll have your website there. We'll have all the links that you shared with us, especially the link for the book. And now comes the time in our show where we want to dare our audience to do something. Do you have something that came up for you? Because if not, I have something that came up for me. It's all good. Whatever you want to do.
Look, my dare for the audience is if you've got codependence is all about sitting in your misery or your unhappiness and not doing anything about it. And this drives me crazy.
Okay.
If you've got a problem and you're just complaining to your friends about it, your spouse about, do something about it. Stop complaining. Get up and do something about it. Be a person of action. That
Oh,
is my for
oh,
you.
dare to be a person oh my God, that was perfectly said. Perfectly said. We'll leave it at that. Dr. Becky, I could talk to you for so many hours, and I know that our audience is just loving this show. And
Thank
what
you.
I thank you so much for being a guest on Beyond Empty Nest, because I know this conversation is going to help a lot of women and men um, to figure out what their next step is. Maybe do a check-in and maybe adopt the marriage report and take responsibility. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody, what was your takeaway? I want to know your takeaway. You can click at the very top of our show notes. It says send me fan mail. I won't know who it's from and I can't reply. But if you want to send a message, send it. I'll make sure Dr. Becky gets it. And if you want me to know and give you a shout out on social media, leave a review, send me an email, tag us on social media. But whatever you do, listen to this episode, take action on the dare, and tune in next week for another new episode of Beyond Empty Nest. As I always say, dare on. If no one's told you lately, you're not crazy for wanting more connection in your marriage, especially now. And if today's conversation stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Dr. Becky reminded us that love is a verb, not just a feeling. And the good news, you get to choose it every single day. So if you're lonely but together, or wondering if you've been too rigid, or maybe you just haven't checked in lately, consider this your nudge. Do one thing. Plan a marriage report. Ask, how am I doing? And really listen. And hey, if you're ready for more support, community, and bold midlife dares, join us inside the Dare On membership community. It's where the real conversations continue. Links in the show notes. And until next week, dare to turn toward each other. Dare on for you and your marriage.